Hello, everyone, and welcome to another monthly Zoom webinar hosted by the Niles S&A Silent Film Museum in California. The museum is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and if you enjoy programs such as this, please consider making a tax-deductible donation to the museum. Today's topic is a comparative look at the great silent comedians, and we could not ask for a more distinguished panel.
You talking about us?
Richard M. Roberts is an internationally known film historian, collector, writer, lecturer, commentator, filmmaker. He's the author of the book.
Go ahead, Richard. No, go ahead.
He's the author of the book, Smileage Guaranteed, Past Humor, Present Laughter, the Comedy Film Industry, 1900 to 1940, 1910 to 1945. Sorry about that. He's also
it's out of print, so why are we plugging that?
Well, let me plug something else then. He's also a prolific DVD producer and commentator, and has just released the third volume of Charley Chase's Hal Roach Talkies, for which he's put it up. Let me put it up. For which he has recorded commentaries on all 22 films in the package. Anything else you want to say about the DVD?
Just go buy it, folks. And if you haven't bought the first two volumes, what's stopping you? Go get those first. Those are even better. You know, you can have all of Charley Chase's Hal Roach films from 1930 to 1936 for less than the price of a dinner for four at a decent restaurant. I don't know. It's good. What else do you need to say? That's it. And of course, we should plug the only place you can find me on the internet, Silent Comedy Mafia, which is www.silentcomedymafia.something.net. I don't know. Google it. Look it up. All right, go on. Com. No, there's no com involved. I think it's net. But anyway, go ahead. Just Google it.
Frank Thompson is a film historian and writer, the author of more than 40 books and hundreds of articles, interviews, and reviews in newspapers and magazines. He has served as writer and producer on many television shows. He has produced, written, and/or directed several documentaries. As an authority on film history, Frank has provided audio commentary for many classic films on DVDs and Blu-rays, and has appeared on screen in numerous documentaries and television specials. Say hello to everyone, Frank.
Hello, everybody. I hope.
Yes.
And last but not least, Scott Eyman is a noted author and film historian and an adjunct professor at the University of Miami in the Department of Cinematic Interactive Media. Few Scott's exceptional and most recent Hollywood biographies are Cary Grant, A Brilliant Disguise, Hank and Jim, the 50-year friendship of Henry Fonda and James Stewart, and John Wayne, The Life and Legend, and Empire of Dreams, The Epic Life of Cecil B. DeMille. Scott will also be a presenter and a panelist at our annual Buster Keaton celebration in Iola, Kansas next month. For more information on that, please visit iolakeaton.com. Say hello to everyone, Scott.
Hello to everyone, Scott. Hi, guys.
Well, so far,
just a reminder too, we will have some time for some Q&A at the end of this webinar, about an hour in. So please type in whatever questions you may have in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them at the end. Over to you, Richard.
I'm supposed to explain why we're here, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Well, ladies and gentlemen and esteemed colleagues, we've called you all here today to discuss one of the standard stupidities of the internet and internet fandom, which is these wonderful time-worn arguments about, my comedian can beat up your comedian. I mean, I mean, the eyes just roll into my head when I see, one of these sort of arguments going, and I hear something like, I just can't get into Buster Keaton because he's not Chaplin. To which the response should be, well, duh. It's like Chaplin is Chaplin. What you can only like Billy West after Chaplin or something. I mean, to me, what has kept me interested for nearly 60 years in all of this is the fact that not only is there a great diversity within the comedy film industry, as we like to call it. But there's all these damn funny guys with all these different points of view. So, yeah, great. I'm glad Keaton is not Chaplin, and I'm glad Langdon is not Keaton, and I'm glad, Ham and Bud are not Laurel and Hardy. It's like, it gives me all these different things to laugh at. So, the argument shouldn't be my comedian beats up your comedian. It should just be, hey, look at all this cool, funny stuff and what the differences are between them. So I guess that's what we're going to talk about here for the next bit of time. How's that? There's our opener. Now, who do we start with? Do we have to start with Chaplin? Because, well, the other thing that drives me crazy is this whole, concept of the big three, which of course, I guess James Agee started, and it's been carried on by academics forever. And again, there were hundreds, literally hundreds, if not thousands of comedians. I mean, this is how crazy it got. Years ago in the Silent Comedy Mafia, we started a joke about the 2,467 comedy geniuses. And then, we would just have these jokes like, no, Billy Franey is, like 1,114, but he should be, 1,008. And, back and forth. And we were doing it as a joke. And then some Nimrod thought, hey, this is a great idea to make a list. And he actually wrote a book. It was like 100 greatest, and he rates them numerically. And it's just like, what is the point here, kids? Go ahead.
I said I needed the money. Don't.
Oh, it wasn't you, or unless you were writing in a pseudonym. No, you write interesting books, Frank. But it's like I said, why can't we just be happy that we had this incredible, wealth of humor, which is certainly lacking today, which is to me why the stuff is so precious now. And talk about the differences and talk about the different, some days I'm more in a Harry Langdon mood or a Raymond Griffith mood or a W.C. Fields mood. It's just, that's the great joy. It's the diversity of comedy, since that's a popular word these days. So talk about yourselves. Come on.
Well, I agree. There is little to be gained from the comparisons. But however, there are a series of metrics upon which we can weigh them against each other to at least come up with a partial comparative thing. For instance, number of movies made, number of films made. Who made the most?
Yeah. Well, who made the most? But I mean, the whole Three Kings of whatever. I mean, there's some argument there. These were the guys who, certainly in terms of box office, were doing the best. But if the problem with the Three Kings is you kind of that is all got to be hindsight, because if you're doing it chronology and looking at specific years, there were other comedians who made as much or more than the big three. In 1920, Roscoe Arbuckle was probably partially because he was making more movies. I think Chaplin didn't release anything in 1920. Roscoe Arbuckle made more money in 1920 at the box office than Chaplin did.
Well, you mentioned James Agee's comedy's greatest era, but in 1949, was it?
Right.
49.
Right. Life magazine.
So I'm sure that he did not imagine that he was setting the agenda for the next 75 years of writing about film.
Of course not.
But in 1949, basically, and Agee's living in New York, writing for Time Life, what he could see was what the Museum of Modern Art had. And the Museum of Modern Art did not have Billy Franey, or the 3 Tons of Fun. The Museum of Modern Art had Chaplin, Keaton, and Lloyd, because that was the accepted triumvirate, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost.
Well, actually, I hate to tell you, MoMA did have them, and Irish Berry was tossing them in the nitrate disposal bins. Well, but anyway,
see them, because if she was burning them, nobody could see them.
Right.
So what people could see is what Agee was writing about, So and the whole idea of sifting and resifting, it's like an archaeological dig. It's like digging out Pompeii 2,000 years later. oh, this is interesting. Look at that. Look at the fresco on that wall. Isn't that beautiful? Or look at the mosaic on the floor. So we're looking at frescoes and mosaics that were buried when AG was writing his piece and continued to be buried for decades. So history is all about assessing and reassessing in the light of new evidence. So that's what we're doing. You've got to move beyond AG. AG wrote like a god, for God's sakes, but he was limited in terms of what he could see and what he remembered from his childhood in Knoxville.
Yeah. Well,
So you're saying that AG has aged, Scott, right?
No, I don't know. That piece lives beautifully when you read it. There's nothing I would particularly change about it. There are 25 and 40 and 100 pages I would add to it.
Right.
What he says is absolutely correct, I think, in terms of his assessment of Chaplin, his assessment of Keaton, his assessment of Lloyd. And then he kind of shuffles past Langdon because I don't think he knew what to do with it, and Sennett and all the rest. But there's a lot of evidence that has come to light in the archaeological dig that is film history. And nobody has really done that version of history since AG. There have been books written about comedy, but they all get kind of twisted up in post-World War II comedy, which is completely different than pre-World War II comedy, because post-World War II comedy becomes more verbal and less physical, for instance. And we're talking about essentially physical comedy. Right. And that's completely pre-World War II.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, Walter Kerr basically did what he could to certainly perpetuate and maybe widen that hierarchy a little bit with Silent Clowns, and that came out in '75.
Yeah.
Because, look, and the thing about AG's piece, because I argued this with academics there once who think that it really was this huge influential thing. It really wasn't. In '49, it came out in the issue of Life. Everybody, oh, that's nice, it's fun, but it really didn't influence any big revival. I mean, Chaplin reissued City Lights, Lloyd reissued The Freshman. Both of basically played the big.
He reissued City Lights, and why Lloyd reissued The Freshman? Because of the AG piece.
I think so. I think that they saw, hey, there's a little bit of interest here, let's do it. Right. But that's really about all it did. The real big revival and interest in this stuff didn't come until the late 50s, and really that was Robert Youngton and television. Sure. Releasing some of it.
Sure, absolutely.
Because the AG piece was reprinted in, I think, AG on Film 2.
Yeah.
But those books didn't sell until the professors started teaching them in the film classes in the 60s. So, like I said, I think it was way more influential with academics than it was with the general public, the piece. But like I said, I think Kerr's book, which actually sold very well in the 70s, and it was a big, huge, massive, expensive for the time coffee table book.
It deserved to sell well. It's a very good book.
Oh yeah, it is. And he toured with those films, and did develop sort of another whole generation of people who were interested in that stuff. But yeah, I mean, so now it's just. Everybody assumes, this is the big triumvirate, and the problem is still getting people to look beyond it. It's like, yeah, sort of. There's Harry Langdon might be number 4. Oh, Arbuckle or somebody might be number 5. And I always, to me, I'm amazed again because we're only talking silent comedians. They don't usually get mentioned, but I mean, to me, the other kings of comedy are people like Laurel and Hardy, the Marx Brothers. And W.C. Fields, and
well, they all made silent films.
Well, I guess no, Marx Brothers barely made silent film.
They did make one.
They did make one, so like I said, just making those kind of lists. I guess they're fine for the people who are slightly interested in this, but there's just so much more out there to be seen, and it is on all levels of quality. A lot of other comedians had just as good a days, and just as good a films as anything that the big three made.
Yeah, but you can't expect the general public to approach this with the compulsions and the fascinations.
No.
Write about movies for a living and live movies for a living.
Right.
There's only a certain bandwidth that people have for silent comedy.
and it's getting smaller all the time. I mean, a lot of people don't even know who Chaplin, Keaton, and Lloyd are now. So
Yes, that's true.
I've done, since I moved to Asheville, I started doing a silent screening at a local theater, which of course has stopped for some mysterious reason over the past year and a half. But it was very rare that anybody who came to those screenings knew any of the comics that I was showing. Chaplin was new to most of them. Laurel and Hardy, if they were very old, they remembered seeing them on TV, but that was about it.
Laurel and Hardy are falling down the memory hole.
Yeah. And
No question.
the great thing is that we got pretty good turnouts, by which I mean 75 to 100 people.
That's good.
And they loved them. They loved the shows that we presented to them. Whether it went beyond that, I don't know. But I did want to respond to something that Scott said. In a way, because we are all basically of the same generation. I'm probably 25 years older than all the rest of you, but we all started writing in the 70s, maybe. And there were many, many, many avenues of research that simply did not exist to us in those early days. And so when I read, for instance, my very first book, which was published in '83, so that it was researched from the mid 70s to that point, I'm not ashamed of what I made, of what I had, but I'm constantly seeing, oh, UCLA has all this stuff, but it was not available to us. I was probably 3 or 4 books in before the Warner Brothers archive was made generally available. And so in a way, we were doing as AG was doing, which was writing what we knew. And, I can stand by what I wrote, but I found a whole lot more.
Yeah, but there were, I grew up in Cleveland and we had a TV station, WJW, which was doesn't matter what it was, but they had the MCA TV package. So I saw all the Marx Brothers pictures. I saw all the Fields talkies, Paramount talkies. These films were in constant circulation on one of the local channels, and the Warner Brothers package as well, the pre-1950 Warner Brothers package. All the stuff was in constant circulation on commercial television. It doesn't happen anymore unless you're addicted to TCM or hunting the streaming services. None of this, all this stuff has been yanked off of conventional television, and it's been shunted off to archival sites or semi-archival sites. And that actually doesn't make much sense, because there were only 3 channels in Cleveland, 3 network channels in Cleveland when I was growing up. But I saw all those pictures on broadcast television. I couldn't do that now. If you grow up now, good luck. Good luck.
Well, it's what the information age has done, which is basically marginalize everybody's areas of interest.
Well,
narrowcasting, it's called. Yeah.
Well, yeah. The reason so many, we're all children of television. We talked about this before. When there were 3 channels, and this was all stuff that especially the independent stations were happy to run, just to fill time. Yeah, you came across it, and you most likely stopped and looked at it. Now, you have to go directly. You've got to go searching for it. Yeah. And with most average people, if they're channel surfing, they see something black and white, they're going to move right beyond it immediately, because it just doesn't make any sense to them.
Right.
When I was basically 8 years old to 12 years old, let's say, I saw Laurel and Hardy and the Little Rascals and the Fleischer, Popeyes and Betty Boobs and all the Warner Brothers films every day of my life.
And the 3 Stooges.
And so there was no distance between me and that era at all, because they just came onto my TV screen every day. And I told this to Randy Skredvet, who put it in his Laurel and Hardy book. When we had a class that was a civics class or something, I can't remember what it was, but we were supposed to clip something out of the paper every day and bring it in as a current event. So whatever news story. And the day that Stan Laurel's obituary appeared, every single kid in my class brought that obituary in, because every single kid in my class knew him and was affected by his death and was used to watching him every day of their lives, just like I was.
That's
And
amazing.
that is gone. I mean, we didn't have to seek this stuff out, and we didn't, it wasn't a specialty item to us. It was everyday life.
It was current. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think
really think we were
that
lucky.
will never be regained.
No, because we were exposed to a greater variety of film comedy, to take just one genre, than the kids today at the same age. Because
Sure.
unless they have a predisposition or are searching that stuff out, they're not going to see what W.C. Fields. I
No.
teach at the University of Miami. They have no clue who W.C. Fields was, the kids.
Right.
And these are film majors. And they have no clue who the Marx Brothers are. They may have heard about them, they may have seen a still, but they have never seen one.
Never seen a film.
That's
And the problem is, if you introduce, and the Marx Brothers is a prime example of this, they have no frame of reference.
No.
To even take it in. It's, why is this guy got a weird painted on mustache, and why is this one guy not talk and pull weird things out? It just doesn't make any sense to them.
And why is he sexually harassing that cute blonde?
That's right.
Canceling.
Yes, well, that's the frightening thing, is the current generations don't know why he's doing it. And I think that could be part of the problem. But anyway, it's I don't know, and to me that's a sign of the decline of Western civilization. But at the same time, I go, maybe they were just really lucky to get that second wind of discovery in the first place.
I don't think it's a decline of Western civilization. I think it's simply that, again, to use a phrase I used before, there's less bandwidth for stuff that's 100 years old.
Right.
Than there, and because we were seeing movies when we were kids, we were seeing movies that were 20 years old. Okay, maybe 30. I wasn't seeing silent movies. They weren't showing silent movies. I was seeing early sound and 40s movies. Well, this was in the 60s,
Yeah.
So it's not, but as time goes on, those movies are now 80 and 90 years old.
No, it's more than that, Scott, because I'll tell you now, kids now won't watch a movie made in the 90s.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Well.
Yeah. So it doesn't, it's.
But I have this interesting experience because I teach, film majors at University of Miami, which is the kids come from all over the world to go to South Beach. And while their parents pay for the tuition at UM. And I show them Keaton, I show them Chaplin, I show them Lloyd, and their responses are really interesting. Lloyd, they enjoy, but they're more interested in how he did it than in the why. Keaton, the thing about Keaton, they don't laugh much at Keaton because it's a strange world they're being invited into. Keaton really didn't make movies in the 1920s. He made movies in Keaton's world. And it's a strange world if you're not used to the rhythm of it and the look of it and the feel of it. So they don't laugh a lot at Keaton. Chaplin,
but they're hooked, but they're drawn into it, right? They're not laughing, but they're
to an extent. I show them Modern Times for Chaplin, and they respond immediately because Chaplin made movies in the real world. And they recognize the world that Chaplin's making a movie in, even though it's 90 years ago. So, and I don't ask them who their favorite is because that's not the point. What I want them to do is follow the breadcrumbs, is watch more stuff that they find interesting. I tell them at the beginning, you're going to see some stuff. Some of it will leave you absolutely cold. Some of it will strike a spark. Follow the breadcrumbs, see more stuff. If it happens to be German Expressionism, watch more Lang, watch more Billy Wilder, watch more Robert Siodmak, whatever, watch it. If it happens to be a comedy, silent comedy, watch more Chaplin, watch more Lloyd, watch more Keaton. It'll lead you to other guys, and it invariably works that way. I don't lay out how they should respond. And if they don't respond correctly, you're an idiot. You're a childish idiot. It's pointless to do that.
Yeah.
You set up the framework for them but it's interesting to see what they respond to and what they don't respond to, and what leaves them slightly mystified. They're mystified about Keaton, like I said, and I explained, well, it always seemed to me that Keaton's character is autistic, is slightly, more than slightly autistic. He doesn't perceive the world the way everybody else perceives the world. He's not interested in getting the girl. He's not interested in being successful. He wants his cow back. He wants his locomotive back.
It's a left-brainer view of life. Yeah.
No, it's more than that. It's a kind of skewed. It's an autistic view of life. If I put it in those terms, they go, oh yeah, but then they say, well, how's it? They didn't have autism in the 20s. Well, they did. I said, I'm not saying Keaton was autistic.
No.
I think his character verges on autism, on our modern concept of autism. Because he's not about the girl. It's not about the girl. And it's not about survival. It's not about survival. It's about his peculiar, skewed version of what matters and what doesn't matter.
Yeah,
and approach him from that point of view, everything falls into place.
Yeah, it's his very Zen-like view of the universe. It's just kind of, again, and his universe is always neutral. You can stand in the same place and either the building will fall on you or you go through the window.
Right.
But and the whole thing, the whole joke with any human relationships he has in the films is how they start to screw up his universe.
Because he's not interested in any other human being.
Yeah. He's fine with his train. He's fine, with
he's happy.
Yeah. But the minute the girl shows up, she starts to mess things up, and that's a joke. And that's a very. It's funny because apart from Lloyd, although really Lloyd too, all the comedians are outsiders. They're all either loners or outsiders. That's the whole point of comedy. And fish out of water. And it's just how each one of them approaches, it's their view, their worldview, which is why I'm glad they are all so different. The thing about Chaplin, and it's weird because Chaplin has had this tendency to go in and out of favor, on and off, various times over the last century. I'm glad to hear that he may be starting to come back because, and again, I always tell you the edge I have on most people talking about this stuff is having run so much of this stuff and seen so much of this stuff with different audiences, with actual audiences. We went through an era, which I'm not sure we're completely out of, where sentiment is verboten or corny or old hat. They don't want that. And the other thing about Chaplin is his whole shtick only works if his audience is completely charmed and tuned into what he's doing. And I think we had the me generation that just wasn't willing to give that much of themselves into anything that they were watching to be interested in what he was doing. And then, of course, now everyone is creeped out about the fact that he was marrying teenage girls. So it's just weird to see how different the reaction. But if we're going to talk about the differences, to me, what is unique about Chaplin, and I was amongst this group of comedians, is he is probably the most joyous of all of these comics. I mean, everybody always talks, oh, he's got the sad endings and the pathos, but he is also the comedian who is able to depict joy and real happiness and real energy, which you don't see, even, maybe to a degree with Lloyd, but with Chaplin, that is a big part of it. I also, and I always kind of think there's a difference between early Chaplin, who is still working out his lower class malice against authority, and the later Chaplin, who once he's gotten used to that, I always said the post kid, Chaplin, where he's worked out.
Once he's processed his anger.
Yeah, and worked his demons out, and then he's like, okay, that's when he starts to head towards social commentary. Yeah. But that's what I love about Chaplin. Keaton. Yeah, Keaton is just total the neutrality of the universe. And his navigating through the pitfalls and dangers of that. Lloyd always says the most mainstream of these comics because he was obviously the most normal, in appearance and demeanor of them. But I always call him the Republican comedian because in that there's just this there's a callousness in Lloyd, and I still think he's funny, and I still love his picture. But there's a callous streak in Lloyd where he will do a whole string of gags about basically destroying other people's livelihoods or property. To me, the greatest example is Girl Shot, where he does this whole chase to the church, this wild, crazy chase to stop the girl from marrying the bad guy. And I always said the film ends too soon because immediately after that, after he gets to the church and he stopped the wedding, the police should come in and arrest him for all of the destruction he caused in getting
But
there.
destruction can be very funny.
Oh, no, it is very funny, but it is very specifically, he's destroying, vegetable carts and he's running over people's cars.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He's hurting all of these innocent bystanders. To me, the one that really disturbed me, he did a three-reeler called Now or Never. And there's a big chunk of Now or Never where he's trying to get to, I don't know, Mildred Davis's house, where he ends up at this farm and he basically demolishes this guy's farm for no reason. And you're just like, the farmer should take the shotgun out and kill him. I mean, he's just, he's wrecked his barn, he's killed his cattle, I don't know, whatever, just this whole destructive thing. And that always just bothered me a little bit with Lloyd.
Now, what about all the destruction in Laurel and Hardy? That doesn't bother you the same way?
It's always on an individual level, and the destruction with Laurel and Hardy is always reciprocal.
Proportionate.
That's how they
proportionate.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I'll cut off your tie. That kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
And they wait while the other person takes the revenge, and before.
Bills. So there's a logic to how it starts to how it ends, and if they thought at the beginning how it was going to end, they wouldn't do it. But it goes step by step by step.
Well, and again, there's a fairness to it. It's okay, I've cut off your tie. Now I will wait for you to, dump the bucket of water on my head. Well, I've talked about this before because I always tell people, big business, I said, there's more truth about human nature in the two reels of big business than all the films D.W. Griffith, Carl Dreyer, or any of the serious people made, because it shows you how people can get into these kind of tit for tat destructions, and they will continue to escalate it until they have destroyed their own lives. It basically shows how we as human beings can get obsessed over the minorest of stupid stuff and cause our own downfall, which we see now on the internet and everywhere else every day. But to me, that's an important message we should all look at and think about from time to time.
I think
and Laurel and Hardy.
Because slapstick is such an integral part of so much comedy, I think the way it's presented has a lot to do with how funny it is. To take us out of the silent era, the scene in Mad Mad World where Jonathan Winters destroys that gas station. There are many people who have said to me, "Oh, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen." It's not funny to me at all. It's that there's not a gag in it. And B, there's just these two helpless guys standing by watching their lives be ruined by this lunatic.
But at least they have contributed to their destruction because
they
trying to stop him.
Yeah, not to the extent that they get it.
But to me, even more disturbing is Sid Caesar and Edie Adams destroying Edward Everett Horton's hardware store, trying to get out.
Oh yeah.
And if they just wait an hour for lunch to end, they'll come back and let them out.
Yeah, in short, I hate that film. So
it is. Well, this is always, W.C. Fields talked, about the two types of people who watch comedy. And he said, there's one type of person who will see a man fall down in the street and will laugh. And another type of person will go, "Oh my God, that man's fallen down in the street. I must go help him." And Fields said, as much as I admire, the second group, what I want my audience is the first group.
Sure. Because
they're the ones who are going to understand what I'm doing. And, and that's, comedy is not pretty. most of the time. And this is part of our problem now in our politically correct, so easy to take offense at everything world is it's hard to do comedy. For starters, you cannot get stereotypes out of comedy because all comedy is based on generalization. And again, good comedy, honest comedy, is going to be cruel and unusual and mean to some point, because comedy is all, taking a thread of a situation and then magnifying it out of proportion to bring attention to it.
Humor is transgressive. It always,
That's right.
You can't get away from that. There's nothing funny about something where there's no conflict.
Yeah. Because somebody once said, you cannot make a comedy about perfect people, a comedy about St. Francis of Assisi is going to go, in the toilet, Although, actually, I've used that analogy a time or two over the years, but Bill Thompson, who was the guy who ran this kid show, Wallace and Lamb, I talk about here, who I thought was a very brilliant actual comedy creator, said, no, there is a way you do it. Make the joke out of them being so perfect they don't notice all the crap that's going on around them. And I went, okay, see, you can do anything. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the whole point. I've always said comedy is the most honest of all the genres because you can basically discuss or talk about anything as long as you make them laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now we're getting to an era where that's not even possible because everyone is going to be offended about something.
Yeah. Luckily, we
have
films at our house, so we don't have to worry about it.
That's right. But like I said, the real fun of this stuff is watching it with audiences. I said that's why I loved doing Slapstick-On. That was the reward, was hearing an audience, laugh at these films and to hear them do the job they do. When you sit watching these things at home by yourself, yeah, that's where a lot of these conversations on the internet come from. It's like, well, I watched Buster Keaton and he wasn't funny. It's like, well, yeah, you're sitting in there alone by yourself, daring these things to make you laugh.
It's like horror. You can't watch a horror movie in the afternoon on TV and expect it to scare you. I'd seen His Girl Friday multiple times over my life. And a few years ago, it was playing in the Last Remaining Seats series in LA. And I went to see it, and there was an audience of 2,000 people there. And I hurt with laughter at the end of that. I knew that I could do every line along with that movie, and it killed me. And it was just because there's nothing like the force of that shared laughter.
Sure.
And it's going to be very rare for us to experience that for a long, long time, I'm afraid.
Do you think most of the people in that theater were seeing it for the first time?
Who knows? I think even if they weren't, I think just being in the audience makes it funnier.
The great thing about audiences is sharing an experience with strangers. And it is. It's even if you had seen it before, when you have all these people enjoying themselves around you, it's fun to join in. It's good and healthy to laugh. Or if everybody is,
except during a pandemic.
Yeah, well, but you can all get on Zoom and we could have 2,000 little faces all laughing at the same time. Why not? But that's what these films were made for. And it is sad that most of the people who are coming to the stuff new now will barely get to know that experience.
I heard somebody on a podcast recently, and somehow they got on Laurel and Hardy or our gang or something, and they said, I just can't stand these long pauses. They just didn't know anything about pacing. And I thought, fools, they knew everything about pacing. And the fact that if you show those films with an audience, as everybody on this Zoom call knows, every one of those pauses is timed to the millisecond of the laugh.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
works every single time with an audience from now as well as an audience from 1928. You know,
Sure.
it's really an amazing art that they had. And,
Well,
but even when I was a kid, I liked it. I liked when I was watching it on TV.
Mhm.
There was something about that pacing that I liked. And I think the first time I ever nearly collapsed with laughter at home is in A Tough Winter when Steppenfetch is taking his gloves off. And I was probably 12 when I saw that, and it knocked me to the floor. And
oh
ever
yeah.
since then, one of my favorite things is when somebody commits to a gag and it just keeps going.
Mhm.
And it goes almost into a valley where you stop laughing and then they can build it back up to where you're laughing again. When that happens, it's rare, but when it happens, it's wonderful.
Well, we're gonna talk about that. We should bring in Harry Langdon, who's the king of committing and stretching out a gag.
Absolutely.
I'm shocked you haven't brought him up
Oh
until now.
well, we haven't gotten there yet, but yeah, I mean, Langdon is that's basically his whole shtick is I've said it before. Langdon's whole shtick is to keep an audience so tense that his slightest reaction breaks that tension and gets a laugh. And it's a brilliant conceit, and it's a brave as hell one, which is why I always said he's really more influential than anybody can imagine, among the other comedians. But yeah, I mean, what always separates the men from the boys in those early Hal Roach talkies is that scene in The Head Guy where they just put the camera in Harry and he goes through this 3.5-minute monologue about breaking up with his girl while trying to eat his lunch.
Oh, it's spectacular.
Oh yeah, and it put me on the floor the first time I saw it. But that I can show you just as many people who go, I hate that. Even Langdon fans. It divides the men from the boys, but to me, yeah, that is what he did, and that's what makes him special. But again, he's another one that requires because his whole universe, and comic persona is based on everybody. It doesn't matter what's going on around him. The only things that matter is how he reacts to it. And that's why his world always has to be so over the top and so strange. And you have to have these big Vernon Dent-sized dangers because his whole shtick is, I'm going to sit here and work against everything that's going on. And if they're going to try to make me move over here, they're going to have to do something really violent. Because my joke is I'm going to stand in place and do nothing as long as I can. And it just, that's why he continually amazed me. Watching him because it's just like, he really going to get away with this? And most of the time he does. Sometimes he falls off the tightrope. But
Langdon is like the reverse image of conventional silent comedy, though.
Sure.
Where conventional silent comedy, they were trying to outspeed each other, outfast each other, a lot of it. Langdon slams it into reverse and sees how slow he can go.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't work, it's painful. And when it works, it's incredible. But
yeah.
I find myself drawn to eccentrics as I got older, eccentric comedians. I'm much more interested in Langdon and Lloyd Hamilton than I am in all the imitations that were going around of Harold Lloyd, Reginald Denny, the young man trying to make good in a nice suit. Reginald Denny and Johnny Hines and all those cookie cutter comedians. I'm much more interested in really eccentric comics like Lloyd Hamilton and Langdon. Now I don't show Langdon and Lloyd Hamilton to my kids. That's the quick way to a lot of people dropping the course.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that's the way, that's the sort of, you go to eccentrics once you've devoured the conventional down the middle of the highway talents, then you start broadening out into the exit ramps into the backcountry, the woods, and those are the woods. There's a lot of guys out there in the woods.
Oh yeah, but that's the thing with Langdon, and I think it was deliberate. I think Langdon said, there's a different way of doing this, and let's see what we can do. but Walter Kirsch said it, and I agree with it to some degree, that yeah, Langdon you can only really start to get Langdon once you've seen everybody else, because then you realize what makes him special, what he's doing, why it is special. And yeah, but the thing I love about both Langdon and Stan Laurel, who I would say were basically had probably the most black outlooks of any of the comedians, but they get away with it by presenting these characters that look like total innocents. But everything is, the women are all knife wielding harridans, and and there's always these with Langdon. There's always, what I love about Langdon is he ignores real danger, but he'll be scared by a balloon with a face painted on. And he'll be spending time, or he'll be spending time fiddling with something while a cyclone is going on around him and he doesn't even notice it. And that's just, you talk about autistic. I always think in some ways Langdon might be the most. He always just comes off as somebody who really is. I get tired of people calling him the baby, because he really was not a baby. His character is more mysterious than that. I always say he's more like the opening of Mr. Bean, where the mothership has dropped him down on the planet and he's got no idea. He's like, he's got a little bit of guidelines, but he's really not quite sure how to do things, and people react really strangely when he does anything. And that's what I love about him.
The thing about Langdon that's weird to me, though, is that little window that he had of commercial success.
Yeah.
It slammed shut. And I mean, he kept working, but he was on the fringe. He never really had an audience. But there was like a 2 or 3 year period where the New York critics liked him and the audience went to see him, and then the window slammed shut and it was over. It was like the briefest vogue of any comic I can think of.
Yeah. Well, he was a breath of fresh air. Again, and again, I get into arguments with a number of Langdon fans about this. Max Sennett was actually the perfect place for him to work, because the Sennett style was that surreal, bizarre universe that Langdon could exist in. Langdon gets into trouble the more you try to put him in realistic situations. Langdon, why can't Langdon have a real relationship? It's because he isn't real. And he's and also the ambiguity and the mystery of the character is what keeps the audience tense and guessing. The minute you can peg him, you're into trouble. You get into trouble.
But you're implying that if he'd only stayed at Sennett, he could have had a much longer run. And
no, what I'm implying is he was never mainstream.
No, God, no.
Yeah.
But he got lucky. He was like a baseball player who had 2 good years and then went back to hitting .220 and went to the minor leagues.
Yeah. He should have changed his character. He stuck with that character too long, and he realized.
Well, character. You can't drop a character and pick up another character.
Yeah,
he did all the time. In some of his talkie shorts, he plays some completely different characters, and they're great. And if you
and later on, when he's starting to play, that's why I said, if you've ever seen his last film or last release film, Swinging on a Rainbow, that Republic musical, he's basically morphed into Robert Benchley.
Yeah,
he's just playing sort of. And he's great. He's great doing that. And if he had lived, I think he could have worked his way into
that lawyer and counsel on defense. He's great as Parson at the end of that Roach feature. There Goes My Heart. I mean, it's just if he had made a series of just that character, series of short films with that character, his career would have revived.
But then, like I said,
working in pictures that nobody's seeing. He's working for Republic in 1939 or 1940. He's working at Monogram and PRC. Nobody's reviewing those pictures to say, hey, look at what Harry's doing. Remember Harry Langdon? Look at what he's doing. These pictures are going out and disappearing immediately. He didn't get a break. He couldn't catch a break at a certain point.
Well, I think more people saw those than you realize. I mean, that Republic and Monogram were covering the small towns and the rural areas. Those are the people who were seeing them, and they were playing the big cities too. The thing is, this is part of the problem with all the silent comedians once talkies come in, is, we always talk about the fantasy element of silent film, and there really was way much more. The minute all of those guys got into sound, their characters are affected by the reality of sound.
Well, you got all
Suddenly-
those jokes. You've got all those jokes that work in silence, but
Yeah.
can't work in sound. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, they can. I mean, Laurel and Hardy proved they can, and Buster Keaton, had he had the control to do it, I think would have proved that you can do
Yeah.
it. But it's just every, you know,
Lloyd,
again,
Lloyd couldn't pull it off.
well, Lloyd had all sorts of problems. I mean, Harold Lloyd, I always said, is actually probably the biggest, most problematic of the great comedians in sound, because and it's not just that he had frankly a bit of a weak voice, but it was also Harold was just too rich and too insulated, again, being a Republican comedian, to realize its audience was now a Depression era audience, not a Jazz age audience. And also he was getting older, even though he aged, very gracefully. He didn't want to let that character grow up. He didn't, Harold Lloyd in the 30s should have been a married man with children dealing with, middle class kind of problems. I always said the movie Harold Lloyd needed to make was something like a Harold Lloyd version of Frank Capra's American Madness, where he's just a normal guy who, works at the bank, gets involved in the run on the bank, or because another thing about Lloyd, I always like him better when he's playing the spoiled rich guy who gets brought down rather than the up and coming guy who's trying to go. I think that's a little closer to Lloyd's real personality. And he should have done one where his rich guy character was brought down by the Depression and then had to survive and build himself up. And that would have reconnected him with that audience. But his character just got, even once he finally started to figure out some of the problems, I think his later talkies are much better than his early talkies.
Yeah, but he made good pictures. The talkies, he made a movie. Crazy is a very good movie. The boxing movie. What's it? The
Milky Way.
Milky Way. That's a good movie. I mean, he made some good pictures. It's not like his stuff goes into a hole.
But they're still not. They still have this feel of being old fashioned. Compare a Harold Lloyd 30s talkie. There were more normal guys who'd taken over his role. Cary Grant was a good example of that. Who were,
seems old fashioned. The movies are good. I think the problem, and you're right, I think the problem might have been his character and his adherence to the character.
Yes.
Which is understandable. From an actor's point of view, you don't just flip out of a character just because a movie or two doesn't do well.
No, but it is interesting to say, I think Charley Chase is a good comparison, who, here he is playing the emancipated, go-getting jazz age male in the 20s. And then he realizes, I'm getting too old to do this. So in the 30s, he either becomes more nebbishy in some films, or he's married and he's dealing with he aged into the character. And there's no problem with any of these comedians aging. I find Buster Keaton old as fascinating as Buster Keaton young. But the
old was not any different. He was doing he kept the costume, he kept the personality, he did the same kinds of gags. He didn't really change.
He did change though. Oh, he did, because basically in the 30s he becomes Elmer.
Yeah,
and
that's
his character and that voice does change. The first time all of us ever heard Buster Keaton talk, it was a shock, because it just doesn't. You try to hear that voice in any of the silence, you just not. It's not what you're expecting. But he did it. But he did adapt. He did adapt, I think, very well to that situation, and continues to get interesting. Lloyd Lloyd had too much power and control. There wasn't anybody around to say, you need to go in a little different direction. Let's tweak the character this way. Let's do that. So the only thing he goes for, and I think it works, but again, it's sort of a hard thing to do. His character gets more eccentric. And I mean, that's why I still think the Cat's Paw is the best of his sound feature
too.
It really is.
But
Even
it's a mark of his problem that he's releasing it through Fox in 1934, when Fox was a moribund organization.
Well, Paramount had first refusal, and they had refused it.
And they refused.
But
nobody wanted it. Fox is on the bottom rung of where you want to go at that point.
It wasn't. But that was telling how much in trouble. That tells you even that Movie Crazy hadn't done all that well.
No, it hadn't. It hadn't.
Yeah.
It's curious to me. I think that's his best talkie.
it's a good picture, but again, it's problematic because he's getting too old to be going to start to Hollywood. And that whole Constance Cummings relationship is just kind of creepy. It's a combination of him heading toward kind of stalker level and her character being completely, as far as I'm concerned, unsympathetic in the way she's playing him, pretending to be the two different people. But it's got great acting.
The film failed. I don't think that's why the film failed, because not enough people saw the movie to warn people not to go see it because the relationship was creepy.
Well, no, it failed. It failed because people had gone to see Welcome Danger and Feet First. See, that's why I was, Welcome Danger was the biggest hit he ever had, his first talkie. Everybody went to see Harold talk, and they all went, "We don't need that again."
Well, everybody's talkie was a huge hit. Look at Coquette. And look
but Feet First, the next one. See, you always look at the picture before to see why the next one failed. And the word of mouth from Welcome Danger is what hurt Feet First. Right. And the people who went to see Feet First went, this building climbing thing is more upsetting than funny with sound.
It's so good. Yeah, it is good.
Yeah. But it's also realistic. And that's the problem. You could hear Harold struggling and calling for help. And it's danger, the danger's there, but the comedy isn't. Mm-hmm. And so the people who've gone to see those, and again, because he's taken 2 years, after that to crank out a picture, everybody is going, Harold Lloyd, is he still making movies? Okay, fine, whatever. And each picture after that had financial. It's the same thing with Harry Langdon. The sad truth about First National is none of those pictures, except for Strongman, even turned a profit.
Right.
And he was in trouble with First National from the get-go. And again, the last one that even did reasonably well, though it still didn't turn a profit, was Long Pants. But the audience went to see that. And here's Harry Langdon trying to murder his girlfriend for no discernible reason they can tell in the version that exists now. And everyone went, he's just creepy. Again, it's so funny because I saw those films very early, and I really didn't. I managed to be in LA when Raymond Rohauer was running all 5 of them in like a 2-week period.
What theater did he show them at?
I've been trying. It was one of the art houses. At that point, I was being driven around places, so I didn't really pay attention to it. But when I'm watching Long Pants, and we get to the scene where he sets up for his girlfriend, I watched the whole audience just go cold. Just like, even then, this is a 1971 audience going, is he really planning to go? He is seriously planning to kill his girlfriend. And it took him a good 20 minutes after that to get back into the movie. And I'm going, if a 1971 audience did that, can you imagine a 1927 audience reacting to that?
Or a 2000 audience.
Yeah, or now. And I think that hurt. After that, when Here Comes Three's a Crowd, a lot of the audience was going, I didn't really like Long Pants. I'm not going to bother Three's a Crowd. And then the people who went to see Three's a Crowd didn't like it either. And then it was.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, I like parts. It's flawed. It's got problems, but it's also got really interesting stuff because it comes as close as in creating that surrealistic universe that he needs. He understood that. And even in The Chaser, because I love the first part of The Chaser. I think there's some great examination of gender roles and everything else in that that works. He was not a bad director. He was a horrible producer.
Yeah.
And if he had the chance to continue, I think he gets. If we ever find heart trouble, we may learn that he got even better, before it all fell down.
Yeah.
But who knows?
We're at the top of the hour, Richard. Should we look at some audience questions? We have a few trickling in.
Do we have any? Okay,
yes,
yeah.
We have
All right, give it. Who's watching out there? Hello, everyone.
Again, remember to click on the Q&A button if you have some questions you would like to submit to the panel. Carrick is asking, do you think Mabel Normand would have worked in talkies?
If she'd lived, yeah. Probably.
She died in 1930, so technically she could have. She could have made.
She could have. That's Mabel is is another one, sort of like Roscoe Arbuckle. It's a what could have been. The reason there's a number of comedians are not on the big three list is, however good or bad they were, they had life or career things happen to them that just got in the way of any success. And I mean, the
Thelma
problem.
Todd.
Well, yeah, well, certainly, but with Mabel, it's still, the jury is still out to some degree on her, because there's so many of her major feature films that don't exist, and frankly, some of the Goldwyn pictures that survive aren't all that good. That's why I've always been kind of on the fence about her, because there are things that there are films she's in that I think she's brilliant, and then there's films where she kind of sleepwalks through them, or she's not particularly doing anything funny. A lot of those Goldwyns and even the Senates are all just retreads of the same Cinderella story. That I think she had. I think she was a major talent that just never quite got the opportunity. It's sad, because I think she's actually at her funniest in those 5 Hal Roach comedies she made in
I was going to ask about those. Those were pretty good, and that's
What did Roach say about her at that point in her life? What kind of shape was she?
She was not in good shape at all. The reports that come down is that basically F. Richard Jones is the one who got her hired, because he was general manager of the studio at the time, and they were great friends. But I mean, all you got to do is watch them chronologically and see the physical decline, because she doesn't look too bad in Raggedy Rose, but by the time we get to Should Men Walk Home,
yeah,
she's in bad shape. And Anita Garvin actually just said to me that she was really not even all together there. That like F. Richard Jones would lead her from the dressing room and bring her in, and everyone was handling her with kid gloves and telling her what to do, but that she was really, even at that point, somewhat of a basket case.
Well, what are we talking? Are we talking about alcohol? Are we talking about drugs? What was the issue?
We're talking about just a seriously ill woman.
Physically ill.
I mean, when you die of tuberculosis, tuberculosis is not a fast killer. So you're talking that she probably was suffering from TB through most of the 20s.
So she shouldn't have been, basically.
Yeah. And of course, probably self-medicating. Just, with so many of these performers that had some sort of substance abuse, a lot of the times it was just self-medicating to get through the day. W.C. Fields and John Barrymore are sort of the great examples. You can talk about what great alcoholics they were, but a lot of that was really covering much more serious illness than anyone was willing to talk about at that point. And I think with Mabel's kind of the same thing. Because you can see, even in the surviving Goldwyn pictures, you can start to see a physical decline. You look at The Floor Below, and then you look at What Happened to Rosa, which are only a year apart, and What Happened to Rosa, she looks very emaciated.
Well, it's like I mean, I've seen a couple of these pictures, and it's like she goes from a 100-watt bulb to a 40-watt bulb. Just no illumination. She doesn't give any energy off anymore.
Yeah. But then again, she's better in the Senate pictures that are after that, and there's some amount of energy there. Malio, she's terrific.
Yeah.
But I mean, if she had lived and she had been well, of course she probably would have, if she had wanted to. I mean, same thing with Thelma Todd. It's like would Thelma Todd have continued? Well, yeah, she was working. It's just all these people were dying of all sorts of things back then. in the pre-antibiotic days, it's amazing what some people were doing to keep going.
Question for Frank. Are there any Western silent film comedies?
Western silent film comedies? Sure, lots of them. Roscoe Arbuckle made, is it Go West? Looks like the Keaton Go West. I mean, the same title.
And The Roundup?
Roundup.
Well, Roundup's not really a comedy, but yeah, but no.
No, but it has, he plays a pretty straight role through that. And it's terrific. And but just about everybody made a Western at some point.
Yeah, Harold Lloyd did an Eastern Westerner, I guess. Yeah, it was a two-reeler.
But there wasn't a comedian who just focused on silent westerns. It was just
Not that I know of.
it
Well,
was just
Universal had the who were the two guys? Pee Wee Holmes and not Bud Osborne. Who was the other? Ben Corbett, which actually was a series of two real comedy westerns, and it was popular. Ran about 6 years in the silent era, and they were comedy cowboys. But yeah, that's.
I guess you
And
could
who
say Al St.
Gibson?
John became a Western silent comedian in the talkies.
Oh well, the Western sidekick. Yeah, I mean both Andy Clyde and Al St. John did very well with the Western sidekicks later on. But
and Oliver Hardy.
Oliver Hardy, sure. But to some degree, almost Hoot Gibson, because Hoot Gibson has a very light touch in an awful lot of his 20s.
Oh, Rena sang Snakevilles. We have
And
to point
Snakevilles, of course.
We're at the Niles S&A Museum.
Of course. We cannot
After that
forget
part
those.
of his career, Douglas Fairbanks was basically a comedian. He did westerns until he went into his epic phase. He was his films could mostly be called comedies.
And he made there's some Western there, Arizona, Wild Mullet. Yeah,
The greatest of them all, the Knickerbocker Buckaroo.
there you go with William
Starring
Mullen.
Wild Bill Wellman.
But no, I mean, Fairbanks never gets enough credit. When they're talking about the light comedians or the normal comedians, I mean, he really was the first, the starting point of all of that in those films. I mean, he goes, and the minute he quit, you go right into the, Reginald Denny's and the Harold Lloyds and the Johnny Hineses and that whole sort of group. So, yeah.
Question for Scott. Would you claim that any John Ford silent films are comedies? Any Harry Carey ones that are more comedy than Western melodrama?
Well, there's so many that are missing. Of the ones that survive, well, no, I don't think so. Not really. Not of the ones I've seen. There's maybe one that's been discovered in the last 10 or 15 years that I haven't seen. But of the ones that I'd seen, except for that one, no, they're all played pretty straight because I think that's what the audience was buying at that time. I think Ford didn't really start loosening up and expressing that aspect of his Irish personality until a little bit later. It shows up in things like Three Bad Men, which is a lot of which is played for comedy in the sort of thing he would do in Sound with Victor McLaglen. But in Sound, he's not. I don't think he's quite as loose and as comfortable and as willing to expose that aspect of his personality as he was when he got more successful and felt the ground more firmly under his feet.
So what about Upstage and Riley the Cop book?
Well, yeah,
Those
they're scripted that way. That's but and they gave them to him because he was Irish and all that. But those are script pictures more than they're John Ford pictures.
Yeah, but they are. I mean, there's some good visual comedy. Yeah, certainly at Upstage, I thought was delightful.
It's a nice. Actually, I like Riley Cop a little bit more. It's more 40.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It could have been directed by any number of people at Fox, and it would have been more or less the same movie. But Riley the Cop is more of a Ford picture. You can see.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're fun.
My friend John Bengtson says to you, Richard, Chaplin being the happiest on screen is an interesting observation. Lloyd was happy on screen too, but perhaps often at the end of the film while worrying before until the end. I think you did mention Lloyd when you made that observation about Chaplin. But I'm surprised he didn't mention Charley Chase, somebody who just put out a Chase DVD set. Don't you think he's
I talked about it earlier. Yeah, excepting again, so much of his shtick was the comedy of embarrassment that he usually doesn't give much. What I'm talking about with Chaplin is, there's so many times in Chaplin films where you will see him suddenly become exuberantly happy about something. Even if it's right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, when he tears up so he's so exuberant.
The pillows, yeah.
Yeah. Or and that, like I said, you don't see many comedians, partially because well, as Buster Keaton believed, if you smile or laugh at your own stuff, the audience is going to stop laughing at you immediately. But Chaplin could get away with that. And also he does so many things in just a joyful manner. Like in modern times where he's showing off for Paulette Goddard doing the skating in the department store, and this guy, I mean, a lot of the times his because Chaplin again understood this thing about don't make him see you being too happy. His joyful moments will have something looming, coming to knock him down from it at the end. But like I said, he did that. That was just something you didn't see in many other the major or minor comedians.
I've always thought one of the interesting gags in Chaplin is in modern times where he's having his nervous breakdown and he's got the wrenches and we see the woman coming down the street, the heavy woman with the thing on her blouse, and he starts going like this. And I'm trying to I could never imagine any of the other comedians doing that joke and getting away with it. Getting away with it. For one thing, the censors would have gone crazy. The Hayes office would have gone berserk. He gets away with it. And it's also funny because it's him, because there's always that aspect of renegade with Chaplin. And it's partially the tramp, but it's also partially who he was. He was a renegade. He was a renegade within Hollywood. And to get away with that joke in 1936, and this is after the production code comes in.
Post code, yeah.
How did he do that? How did he get that joke in?
Well, but even
then, Hayes had a lot of other things from modern times, though. But
even then, he's got to put it in the context that he's lost his mind.
Yeah,
and that's how he gets away with it. Because if it was just Chaplin in his normal thing going, oh, here comes a lady with nuts on her blouse, it wouldn't work. He has to have gone crazy to do that, and that's what excuses it. That's what gets away with it. But it's but like I said, that's what to me, everybody makes such a big deal about the pathos of Chaplin, and I've always said nobody ever bought a ticket to a Chaplin picture because he made him cry. Yeah, he was a comedian, and he was also, again, not this exalted god. He was part of the comedy film industry. He worked with the same supporting people who were, he always had the great comic, second banana comic people working with him. He always, had assistants who all managed to come off, go off to become, major comedy producers and directors. He was part of that industry. And he was paying attention to what everyone else was doing. I think very much so. And I think it's most telling when you look at all those sequences that Kevin Brownlow put in The Unknown Chaplin, that Chaplin cut out of various pictures. I think every one of those, when I watch them, I look at them, I go, he cut these because he realized this is a little too close to another comedian. That scene with the twin boxers in the circus, that's a Langdon bit. The bit with the stick and city lights, that's a Laurel and Hardy bit.
I love the stick and city lights.
It's great, but it's a Laurel and Hardy bit.
Picture dead. It would stop the picture dead.
Which he knew, but like I said, I think he sees, I'm getting a little too close to somebody else. And also, Laurel and Hardy, Stan Laurel can stop a picture dead and do something with a keg or a prop or so. Chaplin, I got to keep this plot moving. That's, that's not what I do. Right. And so, they're interesting sequences to see, but I think like I said, and this is what I would say about Harry Langdon too, is that once Harry Langdon comes on the scene, you can see his influence with every one of the other major comedians. Everybody is slowing down. Everybody is suddenly becoming more passive. I mean, certainly, and Stan Laurel, his whole shtick wouldn't have existed without Langdon, and he acknowledged that.
Right.
But when you watch, like I said, that scene with Chaplin and the twin boxers that he cut from the circus, or you see the Buster Keaton baseball bit in college. It just suddenly everybody realized, he's doing a new thing, and I can incorporate some of that into what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's what, again, why I find Langdon so fascinating. But so who haven't we talked about? Is there anybody else we should mention?
Raymond
Talking about
Griffith?
Lloyd Henry. Yeah, Raymond Griffith. Oh, I love Raymond Griffith. You
Max
know,
Linder.
you took- well, Max Linder, God, influenced everybody.
Would
I mean, what is
Raymond Griffith have
yeah.
existed without Max Linder?
No, I don't think so. Although really their characters are not that similar apart from the look.
No.
Because Raymond Griffith is always above everything. He's above the plot.
Griffith is never flustered.
Yeah.
Linder is often flustered and angry
Yes.
or enraged. Linder
Yes.
is, I mean, Griffith is never enraged.
No.
He's more like Adolphe Menjou. He might raise an eyebrow to indicate displeasure.
Well, actually, I think it's funny. It's interesting you bring up Adolphe Menjou because I've always basically, said that Raymond Griffith washed up at Paramount because they said who needs two Adolphe Menjous, and Adolphe Menjou was doing way more box office than Griffith was, and Griffith was being difficult.
Uh-huh.
I think that is very telling.
Any other
Linder,
women besides,
I'm sorry, what?
women besides Mabel Normand and Thelma Todd?
Oh God, Gail Henry, who I love Gail Henry, and I'm so glad that gradually, some of her and Alice Howell and both of them, that their films are finally starting to turn up and be seen a bit because they are both fascinating, and they are eccentrics, like Scott said, they are eccentric comedians, and both bring very interesting talents to the table. And
I'd never seen Howell until just when these DVDs came out a couple of years ago. A real revelation.
Oh yeah, yeah, and Gail Henry. In fact, there's quite a bit of Gail Henry up on YouTube that various fans have put up of recent, and
Don't say that. Now they're going to have to come down.
No, they aren't. They're all public domain. And she was fan because obviously she was the the role model for olive oil. When Seeger started drawing Popeye, he was drawing Gail Henry, but she just has just such a fascinating way of working, and as odd looking a woman as she can be, the camera just loves her and picks up everything she. That's why most she's on a number of these Charley Chase talkie shorts, and by the 30s, that was pretty much all she was doing in appearing before the camera, because she's a much more successful dog breeder and trainer by then. But
what breed of dogs?
Oh God, they were supplying her and her third husband were supplying a number of dogs to the movies, including, I believe, Asta.
Really?
Yeah, Asta was actually.
She didn't specialize in one breed. She was training.
No. They were one of the big suppliers of trained dogs to the motion pictures, and this goes into the 60s. They were making way more money doing it.
That's fast. Oh, sure.
As was Eleanor Keaton, you know that, right? Buster Keaton.
Oh yeah. With the Saint Bernards, yeah.
Yeah, she was actually more interested in talking about Saint Bernards than Buster.
Oh yeah, yeah.
In her later years.
But no, that's what Gail. I mean, Gail Henry was just an interesting lady, and went through several husbands. The last of whom was easily 20 years younger than she was. But yeah, that again, she and actually had her own film company, had control of her. When she was making the model comedies for Bullseye Reelcraft, 1920. She and her then husband Bruno Becker were producing those, and they are delightful, and fortunately more of them are coming to light.
I've always the interesting thing is that there was such a majority of comedians in the silent era were male rather than female, starring comedians, and I'd like to see more of Colleen Moore.
Oh yeah,
one of the few who kind of had the career that Mabel Normand didn't in features.
Mm-hmm.
And most of her pictures, other than an occasional one-off like Lilac Time, most of her pictures were light social comedies. And the ones that have survived are delightful, and she's effervescent. They're not great pictures, but they're really good, solid programmers,
They're good star vehicles. Yeah,
they're very good star vehicles. And I think she's actually had a very interesting career. And it all disappeared as soon as sound came in. I mean,
Well, not that it hurt her. She owned,
Oh, no,
she
that's
owned a
not
big
the
chunk
point.
of Merrill Lynch.
but she wanted to keep working, and the audience lost interest in the
Yeah.
same way that they lost interest in Harold Lloyd. There was something
Yeah.
about Colleen Moore that was attached to the 1920s, and it didn't
Yeah.
transfer to the 1930s.
Yeah. Well, another one I've always thought was way underrated. Certainly today is Constance Talmadge. I think
Oh,
her
right.
surviving picture. She's delightful,
She is.
and she was a good comedian. And again, wisely,
But she walked away.
Yeah, she just walked. And it's funny because you talk about a number of silent stars. I think the ones who could afford to walk away, who dabbed their toe in the water, did a talkie or two, and realized this isn't any fun. This is not like making silent films, and I don't need to do this. I think that was probably a wise and interesting decision on the part of a number of stars.
Sure.
That was Colleen Moore for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think Colleen wanted to work. Yeah, I think Colleen wanted to work a little more, but the problem was in the 30s. With Colleen Moore, it was a loss of control. I mean, she probably could have kept working, but she would have been an actress for hire. And all those late First National, when she was married to John McCormick and they were producing those, I mean, she had total control of those.
And Swanson's another one, a very interesting case.
Yeah.
A huge star, and something happened. It's almost analogous to Lloyd. The first talkie was hugely successful. Each sound picture thereafter was much less successful increasingly, and by 1934, 35, she's unemployable.
But more, it's not just talkies. It's also the standard arc of any actor's career. I always used to say 7 years was a lifetime. You're lucky, stardom lasted that long. And
was 30 years old in 1930.
But she'd been in pictures for over a decade.
True, but she was still.
And I mean, again, she didn't have to work, and I think just for a lot of the silent stars, especially when you realize just how awful it was working on those sound stages in the early 30s, especially before the unions came in. They were unair conditioned. They were working 16 hours a day. If you could afford not to do that, you weren't going to do that. In the same way, I'm convinced a lot of the guys who did B-Westerns and worked in Westerns forever did it for exactly the same reason. Hey, we're outside most of the day. We're away from the studio where the idiot producers can't come bug us. And we're with all our friends riding horses, shooting at each other and drinking a party. I think if you get paid to do that, that's great. That beats being stuck in an unair conditioned, studio for 16 hours with hot Klieg lights rotting your eyeballs out, So
Another question from Catherine. Does anybody have any favorite female film performances in a Chaplin, Keaton, or Lloyd film?
Sybil Seeley in anything.
Oh, yeah.
I think
she was
Seeley
wonderful.
was the one who stood head and shoulders above all the other Keaton co-stars. She's just delightful in every way.
Yeah, she and Buster definitely were on the same wavelength. And also, I just watched Spite Marriage again recently, and I think Dorothy Sebastian and Buster are delightful together.
Well, that's a real life chemistry too. So.
Oh yeah.
Paulette Goddard's wonderful in modern times. And Virginia Cherrell is wonderful in City Lights. It's not a comic performance; it's a serious performance, but she's really good. And she wasn't an actress. The fact that he actually got a performance out of her is really remarkable.
Oh yeah, and of course,
Walter, go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to mention the Hat Check Girl in 7 Chances is amazing.
Oh yeah.
And
what's her name? Rosemary Rosemary something. I don't know. I can't remember. But she is But also, any Harold Lloyd picture with Jobina Ralston.
You like her?
Oh, Jobina's. She definitely brings more to the table than Mildred Davis.
But Bebe Daniels was also a great.
Oh yeah, early on, sure. Well, Bebe Daniels is another
Well, yeah, that's a good
Female-
Oh
example.
yeah, she's
for
a
bringing
comedian in her
Another
own
one.
right.
But we don't.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
can't-
yeah.
All the pictures are gone. Most of the pictures are gone.
Yeah, but yeah, if you feel my pulse is around, that's a good one. Senorita is out there.
Yeah.
Oh no,
That's a good picture, Senorita.
and speaking of Gloria Swanson, I much rather watch her in Manhandled or Stage Struck than any of the things where she's a clothes horse. Because she was also, even as much as she may or may not have liked doing comedy, she was very good at it.
Oh, she was very good.
I
Absolutely.
can
Yeah.
think of two women who should have done a lot more comedy than they did, and that's Marion Davies and Dorothy
Yes.
Gay.
Oh
And
yes.
both of them, I think, got shunted into other kinds of movies, but when they're in actual comedies, they're as good as anybody.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Dorothy, actually, it's just that so many of those, pictures from the teens are lost because she did quite a few
Yeah.
comedies. And oh no, I think absolutely. There really were. There were way more female comedians than I think. The problem is, and I don't think it was so much. You can read feminist stuff and these, old white guys, film historians don't want to talk about it. It's like, no, they got lost in the shuffle like 95% of all the comedy film industry did. Gail Henry and Alice Powell got filed away with, Billy Franey and Milburn Moranti or any of those people you never brought up talked about. But there really were more of them than we realized. And yeah, Dorothy Gish was always, to me, she was always the breath of fresh air. I always said of the two Gish sisters, she was the one you'd probably want to go party with, the fun one. Although actually Lillian Gish and Annie Laurie is surprisingly fun.
That's a good picture.
It is a good picture.
That took me by surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good picture. John S. Roberts.
Well, and of course, the other great female comedian we're not talking about is Mary Pickford.
True.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, Amarillo of Clothesline Lane, the Hoodlum, the Little Annie Rooney.
Suds.
Yeah. And My Best Girl, which is still my favorite Mary
My Best
Pickford
Girl's a
picture.
good picture. That's a very good picture.
And she
I
is
don't-
funny.
The
Go
earlier
ahead.
Pickford stuff, the late teens and early 20s Pickford stuff, for me, there's a little touch of coy that bothers me that doesn't work for me. Where she's working it, she's working it.
Oh, yeah.
She's got one eye on the scene and one eye on the audience, and that gets in my way. I can see
Right.
doing it, and because she knows the audience expects that, so she's going to give it to them, and she's going to give it to them good. I think actually she got more effective as a comedian as she got older.
Yes.
Except for Kiki, we shouldn't talk about.
Well, yeah. but no, I like I said, if I'm introducing somebody to Mary Pickford at this point, I'm running, if I'm doing comedy, I'm running My Best Girl, or if I want to, go the dramatic direction, I'm running Sparrows.
Sparrows, right?
Those are the two.
Those are the two best pictures she made late. And that's a rich period for silent films. It's
Yeah.
the richest period for silent films. And those are two superb silent films.
Yes, absolutely.
Back to back. You're the best.
But yeah. And other female comics, if we just want to go to Hal Roach for a minute, I will talk about Martha Sleeper forever. I think not only is she adorable, but she was funny as anything. And was really showing it in some of the late Max Davidson comedy she was in. And she also, just like Thelma Todd, was another one who had a nice rapport working with Charley Chase. And
Anita Garvin, while we're at the Roach.
Also,
Yeah.
oh shoot! I just had a brain freeze. Marion Peanut.
Byron,
Byron.
absolutely. Oh, yeah. And Anita Garvin.
Yeah.
And
she
Anita
was
Garvin.
Great. Yeah. And Anita, that film, A Pair of Tights, is one of the great two-reelers, I think.
Yeah. And sadly, because they only did 3, but the other 2, it's like the Feed 'em and Weep, suddenly they turned Marion Byron into Harry Langdon.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just like, they had it. They had it with a pair of tights, and then Howard they went off in another direction. And which is also the thing that frustrates me so much about the Thelma Todd two-reelers, the 30s. The good one, the Thelma Todd Zazu Pitts comedies start off good when Mickey Nealon is in charge, and they have a feminine viewpoint. But then Nealon gets, fired as he usually did, and they bring in people like George Marshall, who's a great director. But now they're doing female Laurel and Hardy, and it's just that doesn't work. You just wish that Hal Roach would have hired a few female comedy writers, who could bring that that viewpoint back. Because the best of those shorts are the ones that have a real feminine viewpoint in the comedy. Like On the Loose, where they're every date they're going out and they're being drugged to Coney Island, and you're seeing it from their view. That's that, and it's sad
And
because
the series doesn't help when Zazu gets
Patsy
swapped
Kelly,
out.
sure.
Patsy Kelly, yeah.
And again, Patsy Kelly what is so frustrating about her I love Patsy Kelly when she's playing the smart character. When she's Billy Burke's maid in the Poppers, and you have that, that East Coast Irish sensibility. But the problem with when they're casting with Thelma Todd is they've turned Thelma into Oliver Hardy, and Patsy Kelly is like the psychotic who's just getting them into trouble and fighting with people and all. And to me, if they had flipped those roles and made her the smart one, and have Thelma, getting them into trouble, by, flirting with somebody or getting them into some sort of situation, and then Patsy having to get them out of it, I think that would have worked way better than what they had. But you'll hear me say on the commentaries on this new Charley Chase set, not all of Hal Roach's ideas were brilliant. And in fact, it was usually better the less he was involved.
Especially his political ideas.
Oh boy, well, we won't go there. But
John is asking, not John Bengtson, another John, who got the biggest laugh while actually injuring themselves in a scene?
Gotta be Keaton, right? I don't know.
Billy Ritchie.
Well, he didn't really die from the ostrich attack. He died of stomach cancer. But
what a great story, though. What a great story. The silent comedian pecked to death by an ostrich. It should be.
Yeah.
It's not.
Didn't happen. But yeah, probably Buster breaking his neck in Sherlock Jr. maybe. Or Larry Fine getting the fountain pen shoved into his forehead in that one Stooge comedy, apparently. The amazing thing. Oh, which one? Oh, well, yeah.
Lighting a cigarette.
My question with that is always, how many real bombs would you have hanging around the Hal Roach studio? There's Frank Terry just took this bomb out of the prop thing and gave it to him and turned out to be a real one. It's like, why would you have any reason to have a real bomb on a Hal Roach set? Who didn't like Harold?
Yeah.
That's the question. Nobody ever, who, was it the mafia getting even with him or something? Who knows? There's just something weird about that story that's always bugged me.
Yeah, never seemed completely plausible.
Yeah.
Something's up there.
But I don't know. I'm trying to think if there were ever any actual, stuntmen or anybody else who got killed in the production of a comedy. I mean, Bill Hauber, who was Larry Seaman's main double and stuntman, got killed working on The Aviator, which was an first national action feature, but he didn't get killed working for Larry Seaman, So really, apart from your average scrapes and bruises, I don't think, there were that many, major injuries, at least that we know of. Comedy. Although Gary Moore always told a story about, working with Buster Keaton in the 50s, and asking him, how can you take all these falls? And Buster took his shirt off and he was covered in bruises. So
totally believable. Maybe
the trick was not to care. So again, comedy is not pretty. That's a buzzword. So is that all the questions, or how are we doing?
No, we've got a lot more questions. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock. How many more do we want to take before we wrap up?
2.
I'm already 2. Do we do 2?
I'm
Two
with
more,
the crowd. Whatever it takes.
In an actual fight, since we're talking about comedians fighting, who would be the most surprisingly tough?
I've been waiting for some, you knew. I mean, I love the fact, we even though our publicity in doing this was going to be talking about the foolishness of it, I was seeing comments on Facebook where people going, "Oh, it's going to be a great knockdown drag out." All I have to say is,
There was publicity for this?
Believe it or not.
My answer would be Keaton. I think Keaton could probably.
Oh yeah. I think
anybody.
Well, as I've always said, it's the little short guys you got to watch out for. They're the mean ones. But yeah, I think
tough and athletic. I don't think anybody could beat Keaton.
Oh well, but it's amazing if you see pictures of most of these comics, with their shirts off, or they were all buff.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to be athletic to be able to do this. And but yeah. But then again, probably Calipasha, Eric Campbell, and Blanche Faison could beat the crap out of all of them. That's my theory.
Yeah.
Probably
true.
Yeah. but who knows? But next question. Give us another.
Dominique in France is still up, so we've got to answer him. He says Chaplin had very recognizable female partners in Mabel, Norman, and Edna Lyons. Did Keaton and Lloyd have equally identifiable female leads?
Well, we've pretty much covered that.
And did it make any difference for the audience, is what he's saying?
I think Lloyd's comedies are very different with his 3 major leading ladies, Bebe Daniels, Mildred Davis, and Jabina Ralston. And they're all good. I mean, I like them all. I think his wife, or his wife to be, is cuter than she is funny, but cute counts for something too. So I think Harold Lloyd's leading ladies went slight steps from Bebe, who was great, to Jabina, who I like very much. But
who would be the best of his talky leading ladies?
Well, I would have said Constance Cummings, but you
I would
I would agree. I think it would be if that character wasn't. Yeah,
that's not her fault. The character, the writing of the character is not her fault.
Yeah,
she's very good in that film, and very attractive. But Lloyd gets into a kind of the leading lady doesn't really matter thing. Phyllis Welch, and he's not really making an effort. I think he made a mental calculation that they're coming to see Harold Lloyd after a certain point, and the girl doesn't really matter, and which technically might be true, but you need somebody to hit the ball back over the net, And Chaplin always made sure that almost always made sure that the actress could hit the ball back over the net that he was working with, even if she didn't have any experience. He'd work her and work her and work her until the ball came back.
Another one with Keaton we haven't mentioned is Katherine Mcguire.
Oh yeah,
who, in the Navigator, and she was a Senate trained. She started as a bathing beauty comedian, and then after doing those was Lupino Lane's leading lady in a number of his educational comics, and she is quite good. And she and Keaton have a really good chemistry in the Navigator, and even in Sherlock Jr. It's a smaller part. Another one. I'd put her probably second after Sybil Seeley with Buster's leading lady, and Marion Mack. I mean that their dynamic in the general is delightful.
But as Scott pointed out, Keaton was always more interested in the train or the cow than the leading lady. So,
but he does work well. I remember having a big argument on one of the news groups about how Chaplin, the difference between how Chaplin and Keaton interplayed with their comics. It's one of the big criticisms I've heard from people who aren't great Chaplin fans is that his stuff looks too over rehearsed. And I said, yeah, there is something to be said about that. And even though he will work with prime people, a lot of the times it's like the machine bit with Chester Conklin, where Chester Conklin's strapped in the machine. All you can see, is his head sticking out of it. And the fight sequence with Hank Mann and Eddie Baker, who are two top supporting comics. That fight scene is so choreographed. I said there might be some ego involved there, that Chaplin rehearses things to the point to make sure nobody is going to upstage and that everybody knows what they're doing. Keaton would give you he would get lucky with people like Ernest Torrance and Steamboat Bill Jr., where he really had a nice interplay and reaction with the people that he is working with. That's why I always wish he'd been able to do the picture with Marie Dressler at MGM that he had tried to sell Irving Thalberg on in 29, because I think they would have been great work. And Langdon's kind of the same thing. Everybody who worked with Langdon are all basically, just there to keep him contained in his little proscenium area to do all of his stuff, which is why, to me, the classic Langdon master shot is Vernon Dent or Bud Jamison standing with their back to the camera in the foreground, standing him down, giving him the tension so that he can sit and fritter around, in the background and mid stage. That, but they all, everybody, was working to the best of their ability when the people working with them were great. That's why Chaplin and Eric Campbell in the Mutuals, I think, were never topped. That because they have just a great chemistry together. And Campbell was just such a great foil. You wish he had lived long, and continued to work. Or Chaplin and Max Swain in the Gold Rush. There was another one, another bit of good fortune. So
Chaplin,
that's why these people.
I don't think Chaplin gets enough credit for his courage in hiring actors and letting them upstage him. Max Swain in the Gold Rush, Jack Oakey in The Great Dictator, Martha Ray and Monsieur Verdot. He basically says, "Here, take the movie, run with it as far as you can. You just be the lead comic for the next 15 minutes." And they did.
He actually gave instructions to Oakey on how to upstage him. So you have to look in the camera.
He hires them knowing that they can take the movie away from him. I think that there aren't a lot of comics, star comics, who will do that, really.
Well, but he's also editing the picture. I mean, there were accusations against him and Keaton in Limelight.
Who did Jerry Lewis ever hire that would steal a scene from him?
No, sure.
I mean, come on. Very few comics will do that.
That's why he wanted to get rid of Dean Martin. So, well, I mean, and that's yeah. And it's interesting because actually Chaplin gets, I think, better with that as time goes on. There's more opportunities, and he's hiring those kind of people. Really, the first picture he does where he's working with anybody else on a nearly equal level is The Kid with him and Jackie Coogan.
Yeah.
So I mean, with all these guys, they changed with age if they were wise, and that's why they continued to have career. And also working with those kind of people kept them current. That's why when Lloyd let Paramount basically put him in Milky Way, suddenly he's working with Adolphe Menjou and Lionel Stander, and he's working with these top character people. And it does bring something to the mix that is missing in some of the other Lloyd.
He has to work off their rhythm. They're not working off his rhythm. He's working off their rhythm.
Yeah. And
that was asking us about Ben Turpin. I don't know if he really was happy with Ben Turpin sharing the spotlight with him. That seemed like a real.
I think he was scared of Ben Turpin. I like him with Roscoe Arbuckle. I think he's very funny with Roscoe Arbuckle.
They are wonderful.
They are great together. Yes.
Yeah. Well, but Arbuckle was obviously very generous in his supporting talent. I mean, because look at him and Buster Keaton. So yeah, I mean, Arbuckle is the other classic one. You know, what might have been or what might have happened if the scandal hadn't hit it. You know, how his popularity would have continued. I mean, I love those 6 Vitaphone talkies that he did, even though they probably killed him.
Yeah.
Because he is just such a warm personality. The camera likes him. He's got a great voice. Yeah, it's just you know. But there's so many what might have been. I mean, you look at Oliver Hardy and John Wayne in The Fighting Kentucky, and you go, you know, yeah, if Stan and Babe had really broke up or never gotten together, he would have been probably a great character player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he would have continued because he was one of the best film actors, I think, you know, there was. He really understood that medium more, I think, than Stan Laurel
did. It didn't seem to me that he wanted to do that, though. He didn't seem to want to set a path for himself apart from Laurel.
Well, at that point, he was actually seriously considering it. There's an interesting thing that, again, doesn't get discussed much with Laurel and Hardy in the late 40s there. Stan was having health problems, and Stan had also alienated most of the major studios, and Ollie always had to, you know, had to keep working to cover his gambling debts.
Mm-hmm.
After Fighting Kentucky, because Wayne, certainly, you know, wanted to do more pictures with him.
Sure.
And he would basically, in 49, Monogram announces a series of comedies that were going to star Oliver Hardy and Charles Coburn. And it apparently came down to sort of a showdown with Stan saying, listen, you can't work. I've got to keep working, and I can't be a part of, I think the other thing that happened was when Hardy did Fighting Kentucky and the Riding High cameo, he didn't realize that his paychecks on those didn't go to him. They went to Laurel and Hardy Feature Productions. And he went, wait a minute, you know, yes, I'm part of this corporation, but I need this money. And I think it came down to kind of a showdown with Laurel and the attorneys, like, all right, are we going to continue as a team? Because if we're not, I've got to keep working. And really, Atoll K saved their bacon on that. And that was why, and then of course the music hall tours, because basically, you know, Stan had told Fox, you know, I'm not going to re-sign with you guys. He had alienated MGM. In 1947-48, where the hell else were they going to work?
Right.
You know, the other Warner Brothers wasn't interested. Paramount had Hope and Crosby, had their comedians.
Columbia wasn't interested if Jules White wouldn't touch him.
Yeah, they weren't going to work for Jules White making 2 reelers. You know, the only, you know, there weren't that many options unless they were going to go to Republic or Monogram or something, which actually might have worked. Who knows? But so yeah, I think there was kind of a period there where they could have split up again. It wasn't a personal thing; it was just totally business. And Stan's rocky hell.
Money.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, well, I'm ready for dinner.
I see a hurricane bearing down on me from outside the window.
There's a hurricane.
Are you serious? Is the weather bad out there?
Yeah, the Hurricane Henry is coming, so I don't know how much longer I'll have power or internet. So,
well, why aren't you speaking? Are you speaking to us from your storm cellar, you know, right now or something?
No, it just became pitch black outside. It's coming.
Oh, so unless there are any more fascinating questions, why don't we call this a day?
Okay. Well, thanks all. Thanks to the panel, and thanks to the Niles S&A Silent Film Museum for hosting another great event. And keep an eye on the site for more. Good night, everyone.
Stay safe, Hooman.
Good to see you guys.
Okay, guys, always fun.
Bye for now.